Hello, my name is Bill Haley, and this is for Haley 2024's Government Reform Ideas. Now, this this video is going to be on the debt. So, what I'm doing is proposing a new constitutional amendment for the United States. It will replace every state constitution and actually create the constitutions for the localities as well. Every every current government, every local government, every state government, and the federal government will have a distinct full CRA structure. CRA structure is competitive governing. You select the governing body that you want to govern you. They regulate, they govern, and then they send representatives up to a monopolized board for the very few things that need to be monopolized to control. So what we have going on here is we have a tremendous amount of debt, well over 30 trillion, but we also have the debt from Social Security, unfunded liabilities, and the like. But we'll discuss how we're going to go from the current system to a system of fully free enterprise courts, law enforcement, prisons, roads, education, military, everything that government's currently doing goes free enterprise. A lot better accountability through my accountability sectors, representative bodies that does accountability. So we have a full system of a lot more accountability than we currently have, and a lot better system. Goes into the free enterprise system where the system just works a lot better when you have free enterprise. Socialism never will work better than free enterprise. So that is a basic belief and knowledge that we have. We learned that. I mean, going through the many tens of thousands of years of human history that we can, I know we don't even have but 3,000 or 4,000 of decent history. 3,000 or 4,000 years of decent history that we can go back and look at. Even at that, we have a hard time understanding what they did. But nobody has gained the ability to have a society like we have in America until we started about 200, 300 years ago with some free enterprise. Before they had socialism, before they had kings and queens and monarchs, but when people had the ability to be an individual and own themselves and not be a subject to a king, not to be under socialism, people thrived like never before. So throughout world history and the world, we have done so much better. So we take the best of the free enterprise and we bring it into government. And we do that by competition. Everybody selects who they want to be governed by. Government's still important, no doubt. But we should do a competitive governance. Conservatives should be governed by conservative values. Liberals should be governed by liberal values. The left should be governed by leftist values. But you only can govern within your membership. You select your governance, and they can only govern you. Okay, I went 3.5 minutes and I haven't even got into the debt hardly. Let's go through this constitutional amendment to bring more free enterprise into the mix. A lot more competitive governance into the mix. So, we have 30 sectors. Let me go over, I don't have it right here with me. I'll do it in a second. We separate all government power into 30 sectors. Education is separated from military. That's separated from roads. That's separated from land and water. That's separated from financial regulations. We do 30 different ones. Helping the poor is 3 different sectors. Within each sector, you select one of 12, roughly 12, different CRAs, competitive regulatory agencies. Each CRA is its full government, executive, legislative, and judicial powers. If they send representatives up to the sector board level, that's a full governmental system too. That's monopolized governments for only the things that need to be governed by a monopolized. It has to be standard across the board. Not too much, 10, maybe 15, 20%, depending on how you want to look at it. But they still govern through the CRAs. The CRA takes a regulation and governs through that. It's monopolized regulation governed through the CRA that you're a member of. And the rating system side is going to make the system work so much better by giving high quality information from a wide variety of perspective. You choose from choose a RA, a rating agency that you like. You like their philosophy of how they rate. How you rate is dramatically different for a liberal versus a conservative. They have not just a different endpoint, but they have a different way of getting there, a different value system. So we don't want to have one monopolized rating system because you're just going to abuse it. That's a recipe for gaming the system and just abuse and corruption. The rating system being competitive will root out most corruption, most self-dealing and the like. So let's keep on going. It'll root out all the gaming of the system. Okay, here's the Constitution. Section 1, citizenship, read that. General laws, all Constitution needs general laws. Bylaws deal with the difference between executive, legislative, and judicial. I think I said it all: executive, legislative, judicial. Memberships, taxes, fees. It just how you manage each CRA, each legislative branch, each judicial branch. How you it's internal management. The bylaws. Federal, state, and local. Every current government has a full CRA structure distinctly. Not this. All the states together don't share one CRA structure. They each have their own CRA structure. Each locality distinctly has its own CRA structure. Original authority is more of a teaching one, and giving information about who has the ultimate authority, whether it's a CRA, sector board, parent sector board, whether it's the federal, state, or local. There's a lot of that in there, plus some more. Supermajority, if it's at the sector board, monopolized governance level, needs a 70% to do something, with very few exceptions of things that need to be done. Absolutely. So let's keep. You can look at that video and run through and find out what those things are. Not a lot, but very few. But the structure of it has to be built, and that takes votes, and that has to be done. And obviously that can't take 70% because sometimes you won't get that. Anyway, multi-step voting system within that if needed, less than 70%. The parent sector board, it talks about how that's built, how that's structured. The CRA sectors, governing only their jurisdiction, monopolize governance within their jurisdiction. Competitive, now when I say jurisdiction, within their sector's jurisdiction of education or finance law or sales and labor law, that jurisdiction, and the jurisdiction of federal or state or local. I know it's strange using the same word for both of them, but that's the word we have right now. The rating system is so important to know. I did a video on that, April 2021. Again, I haven't said it on this video. In 2021, in February through probably going through June, I'll be doing several dozen videos dealing with talking about this constitutional amendment. I spent many months creating this constitutional amendment from the government reforms I did. I have a lot of videos from late 2019 to early 2020, and then I stopped for a while, redid a lot of stuff, refined it, and worked on my Constitution. And now I spent a lot of time on the Constitution and creating a whole bunch of videos, taking probably a good half a year just to create some good videos discussing the reforms in a constitutional manner. This one is going to be on debt. Shoot, I'm 9 minutes into it and I haven't talked about debt yet, but I just did the taxation video, and this one's going to be on debt. And again, you're going to get an overview at the beginning of all these things, because if you don't understand where it fits into the whole Constitution, you're not going to understand it too much. Pockets of freedom is immigration and foreign policy. I'm not going to go farther into that, or I'll be a 20-minute rabbit trail. States' partial acceptance per sector is an important sector. I mean, it's not that important. It's to help get enough support through the state's current bodies to create this amendment. You need 38 states to pass it, and this will help get the support. The separation of responsibilities and authorities into 30 sectors, that's super important. And I think near the end I'll go through all those. And let's go through this. So Section 12 is debt. There's going to be a lot here. The parent sector board of the federal, state, and local governments must take ownership of all government assets and liabilities as defined in the 5-year transition plan. So important. State level will take care of the state level stuff. Local level will take care of the local level stuff. Federal will take care of the federal level stuff. But everything has to be sold. Everything current government owns, every piece of land, every naval base, every aircraft carrier, every satellite, every school building, every road, every hospital that's publicly owned, it all has to be sold to the free enterprise system. Now, it can be sold to some CRAs, which is free enterprise to a certain degree, government to a certain degree, semi-private, semi-government organizations there. And, okay. So they take ownership of everything. So when they take ownership of it, that's a huge asset. But they're also taking the huge liabilities, the debt. So they take on all the Social Security debt, but they also take on all the assets. Let's go through the assets and the liabilities, and we'll go through that. The parent sector board must use sectors 24, which is going to be retail sales and income taxes and the like. Sector 25, which is going to be a head tax. That's an identity sector. Sector 30 is the a real estate tax to collect taxes to pay off the outstanding debt. Now, there's other revenue streams. Selling off assets is going to pay down a tremendous amount, tens of trillions of dollars worth of assets. When you sell all the roads to the private sector, dollar cost average over 8 years, there's a lot of money coming in on that. When you sell every public school to the free enterprise system, a lot of assets. Every cop car and every cop police station, a lot of assets. Every military base, every aircraft carrier, every plane, billions, trillions of dollars. So no doubt about it. And then we do have some education taxes we'll go into. I'm jumping ahead, but education taxes and Social Security taxes will keep on going for a while to help pay down the debt to offset. So we have revenue streams, multi levels of revenue streams coming in. This amendment calls for many revenue streams, this is talking about it, to pay down the debt, but this is an actual clause. Outstanding debt in this and the next 5 clauses refer to the debt that is expected to be remaining after all the other revenue streams are considered. So I have revenue streams coming in. Selling off government assets, continuation of Social Security taxes to some degree, I'll get into that. Continuation of the education tax to some degree until that runs its course. That's a revenue stream. I'm trying to think if I have another one. Maybe not. The rest of it's going to be coming through these right here. 30% must be collected from sales tax. So a 50-year payoff. I think I have that in a slide in a minute, so I'm jumping ahead. But through a 50-year payoff system, we do a sales tax to pay off some debt. Sector 24 must collect 30% of taxes for debt from a entity's income tax. So sales tax and income tax. That's Sector 24. That's 60% of what's needed to pay down. And if you don't have any income, you still have to pay some tax. We do a minimum. We always do a minimum. Not having a job is not sufficient for not having to pay back the tax. You go into the charity economy if you don't have the assets to or savings to do it. I'm sorry. So I always do a minimum. And if you don't have it, you work. You work in the charity economy. They'll put you to work. Everybody has to pitch in. It's a massive debt. We don't have time or the ability to say only half the people have to pay it. Everybody has to pay it. Sector 25 must collect 10% for 10% of the debt in the form of a head tax. That can be done over a 50-year period of time as well. Sector 25 must collect 30%. So 30% income, 30% sales, 30% real estate tax, and the 10% head tax. That's going to be paying off the debt. What that percentage is, I have no idea. I don't have that knowledge, and nobody's going to be able to figure that out anywhere close to being specific right now. We can get, I'm sure if somebody runs a lot of numbers, they might be able to come somewhat close into a range, but that range is going to probably be a good 30 to 40, maybe 50% margin of error. We just don't know how much assets are going to sell for. We don't know what's going to happen. This is such a huge change, but the economy should take off going further into the free enterprise system, and the growth of the economy always will help out with a lot of this. Sales tax, income tax, real estate tax will all be increased. That just to when the economy grows. But how much are we going to get from selling off property? We just don't know. How much are we going to get? We dollar cost average, so we don't dump everything on the market all at once over 8.5 years, 1% per year, 1% per month. We don't want to drag it on too long. 8.5 years should be enough. 1% a month should be enough to dollar cost average it out and get a good true market. Okay, the debt tax rates described must achieve no less than a 2% original debt principal payoff per year plus finance charge. So that's 50 years. So it has to, you have to have the rates high enough to achieve 2% debt payoff after you already paid the finance charges. The expected revenue of a share loan. Now, share loans is something that I created. It is I described it in my last one with the tax, and I don't have it on the screen right now. But a share loan is and I won't say exactly, but it is a percentage of your income, percentage of real estate value, or percentage of something over a well-defined period of time. So it's worth something. So if you say 10% of my income for the next 15 years, that's worth something. And that has a value to it. And you can sell that into the MCAP, Monetary Capital Asset Portfolio. That's the base of our money. We go into a new money system, a free enterprise money system, money that's totally backed up. And a share loan has value. It has, now this might be a flexible value, but when you buy a whole bunch of them, it narrows down and you don't have so much wiggle room on it. You can have more defined asset there, because you don't know how much your income is going to be over the course of the 15 years. But if let's say it's 5% that the share loan takes, it's going to be worth something. So let's just do it easily. If let's say it's 5% over 20 years, that gives you 1 year's worth of your income going to this share loan, 5% per year. Anyway, there's an interesting concept there, and hopefully you understand that. The expected revenue from a clearly defined future tax is an actual item with real value, thus an asset eligible to be in a Sector 19 MCAP. Again, that's our portfolio of actual assets just backing up the money. 100% backup of money. You're creating the currency based off the portfolio that you have there, the actual value of that portfolio. So a clearly defined future tax, let's say in the year 2030, 9 years from now, you say there's going to be a 3% sales tax for that year, and that's going to have a debatable value, but that could be sold in the market. It might go up and down over the years until you get there, and then you get the actual value of that 3% sales tax. And that sales tax might be on a very defined set of transactions or overall sales tax, but it's going to be very well defined. After the 5th year of this amendment taking effect, these future tax assets and share loan assets must be created and sold into an MCAP at a rate of 1% of the original debt principal per month until all debt is equally matched with assets within the MCAP. So after the 5th year, we can't do this day one. No doubt, this is a massive change. But within 5 years, we should have enough shakeout to see what's going on. We should have a better understanding. We don't have to, every sector is going to have a 5-year plan specifically for that sector at the local level, state level, and federal level. Some things are going to be more at the federal level, some things are going to be more at the local level, some at the state level. But everyone will have a 5-year transition plan from going from the current system to the new system. It's going to be a lot of chaos, and we have to understand that. But we're going into the free enterprise system, and you're grabbing power from the government and putting it in the hands of a free enterprise business. They're going to figure out a way to make it work, or somebody else is going to take the business from them. So it will work, and the chaos will be solved by free enterprise coming in a competitive manner, providing those services. But what we're trying to say is all the debt will be matched with asset and put into the money system, to put into a portfolio, because those things are actual value. You might have a tax 45 years in the future of 1% of sale, let's say 1% of real estate tax. And that's going to be a real value. Now, we don't know what it's going to be in 45 years in the future, but that's going to get a price. If you take that asset and you sell shares of that asset, 1% a month, and you're going to start getting a price for that. Somebody's going to say, I think it's going to bring in X number of dollars. Somebody else is going to say, I think it's going to bring in 2X dollars. And somebody who thinks it's going to create more dollars from that tax, they're going to bid up that share price, and because it's worth more to that person, and they're going to buy that share into the MCAP, and that's going to be something of real value. And 45 years in the future, they're going to be able to collect that money, and it's going to be theirs because they have that asset. They bought that asset. All new debt by sector boards or parent sector boards must be sold to MCAPs by well-defined future individualized share loans. This is not going to happen. The whole structure is not going to allow this to happen. This is a safety valve for just in case. The parent sector board really doesn't have ability to go into debt. The only reason I'm thinking that it might is if there's a major war and we need to pay for it. But I do have a system where 20% of overall military funding is going into a escrow account for major wars. But let's say we get into a big war, year 3 or whatever, and we need more money. The parent sector board might have to go into debt to get that money for that major war. But once the system's set up, we shouldn't have to go do this. But it is a safety valve for the extreme instance of a major war. Never a big famine or never something like that. That will be handled within the full system. That will be handled in the full system. But well-defined future individualized share loans, they're going to be paying an asset. And you're going to be paying, 20 years from now, you're going to have to pay 1% extra in your as income tax, and 1% extra as real estate tax, and you have to give that over to the government, and you have to give it over to them now. You have to pay it in the future, but there's an asset there now that they can sell and buy military services or whatever to fight a war. Standard transition. Now, Section 12, which is the debt, has a standard transition to sell assets the government currently owns, aircraft carriers to roads to school buildings and the like. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read it. Hopefully you understand it. It really takes a little bit of understanding of the whole system to do it. Let me read it, then I'll make sure this is understandable to you. All current government-owned and controlled assets must be turned over to the parent sector board within a 5-year transition and sold into the free market. Okay, the rest of this, I'm not going to read the rest of it. This is just saying I include this. I included a whole bunch of clauses saying yes, and this includes roads, and yes, this includes all the military assets. Yes, this includes all the NASA assets. Yes, this includes all the roads, and this includes all the public school buildings. I don't want anybody to think that because I included all these clauses saying yes, it includes this, that other things are not. It's all inclusive. I'll probably be taking those clauses out with a one simple clause saying all government-owned assets are going to be sold into the free market system, and then make no exceptions. The standard transition from the current government-owned and controlled assets to the privately owned and controlled assets must have a following qualities. So how do we sell it from the currently government-owned to the privately owned? We're going to create publicly traded companies that people can buy stock in. Originally, the government or the parent sector board will own all the stocks. I say the parent sector board, but they're going to be working through the sectors. Every sector will set up a system to do it. So the public school system will be within one sector, all the roads will be in another sector, the military will be in another sector. So they do it separately between the sectors. But then they put all their assets into 100 different publicly owned corporations. And sometimes it's going to be a lot more. Roads might be a lot more. Now, the roads might be, let's say, 10,000 different publicly traded corporations, but then they have 100 per big umbrella group parent publicly owned corporation. Anyway, so they own all the assets. The parent sector board owns all the shares. And then they start selling those shares off 1% per month. So that's a dollar cost average. So we're not going to know what the value of it is on day one. But once we start selling shares, it has to sell for a certain amount. It might sell low and then quickly rise, or it might still start high and go quickly low. We don't know. That's why we're doing dollar cost. We don't want to dump all these tens, if not hundreds of trillions of dollars worth of assets into the market on day one and say, buy it all. Give me the money. No, it's just not going to work well. Plus, a lot of these stocks are going to be the base of paying down the debt later. I'm not sure if that made sense. It made sense to me, but I probably back up on that one. And the stocks are going to be worth something, and until they start selling off all the stocks. But some people are going to own those stocks, and they're going to be owning what's in there. They're going to be actually owning the roads, owning the public school buildings, owning this. Let's go on to the next one before I just talk myself silly there. The parent sector board must determine the number of publicly owned corporations named the public asset corporations. So I named the public asset corporation. And it can be less than 100 if it needs to be, but I don't want it to go too low. We need to have a good diversity. And it needs to be somewhat evenly split. It doesn't have to be totally evenly split, because sometimes that won't make sense. But we don't need too much going into one, because you could have corruption. The reason I said 100 is because I don't want corruption. I want a whole 100 different ones. They have to have good management and have be physically sound on their decisions. And there's a word I'm forgetting about. They have to respect the interest of the corporation. It's dropped out of my brain right now. Anyway, let's keep on going. The parent sector board would sell an additional 1% of the stocks in the open trading market per month. Already talked about that. Every public asset corporation will lease out assets in the open market with fiduciary responsibility obligations. That's the word I was trying to get to. Fiduciary responsibility obligations. That means they're responsible for good management of the assets. Now, what we're talking about is if you have a public school system, it goes into this corporation. They're still needed. The cop cars are still needed. The police stations are still needed. The military assets, the aircraft carriers are still needed. They're going to be out in the water, and the ownership is going to be within this corporation. They're still being used, and they have to be leased. It'll have to be leased out for a while. After 4 years, 50% of the stocks are sold. We don't want to go too quick. Then they can start selling off some of the assets. Now, some things might all be sold off if they get a really good price, and you get a good write-off from a lot of different people saying that's a good value. But we don't want to do that too much. That's going to probably take a 70% vote to do that. Saying we really got a good value on it. They need to own it for this reason or that reason. Otherwise, you're going to be doing a lease until you own it. Type of market. Now, whether that's the best method or not, that's the method that I came up with, and if somebody wants to come up with another one to listen, but I think that's a good structure to try to get this sold through. The revenue from all sources derived from publicly asset corporations will be applied to the debt. That is leasing the product out, which is going to bring a ton of money, trillions of dollars a year into the system. I mean, no doubt, when you lease out the schools to private schools, when you lease out aircraft carriers to military corporations, when you lease out roads to private road companies, and you start collecting tolls, and when you lease out police cars and all the land that government owns, you can get a ton of money, trillions of dollars a year. So when I say there's a lot of tax going on, we're talking big dollars here. But we have $30 trillion worth of debt, plus Social Security, which is this. It could be hundreds of trillions, but I limit Social Security dramatically by the way I do a responsible transition. So it's still going to be a lot, but not quite as much as what some people predict of 200 trillion and the like. I've seen ridiculous amount of money saying that. I'm not sure how many years out. Are they going 100 years out, 200 years out? I don't know. It's all over the place out there. Let's keep on going. CRAs may purchase stocks or assets like every other free market entity. Not so much sector board, but the CRAs may. And take over the assets. But the CRA is going to have to charge. They're going to have to raise the money, buy fees, CRA fees, taxing their members. But owning the assets are going to be important. All these assets need to be owned. There might be a few things that are not going to be needed. But if the government's using them right now, most likely private sector is going to have to do the same thing. They're going to need those police cars. They're going to need those aircraft carriers. They're going to need those roads, and they're going to need those school buildings. Every parent sector board working through sector boards. So parent sector boards, they have to work through the sector boards. And the sector boards never keep the money. All the money keeps on going to the parent sector board, but they have to work through the sector boards, and the sector boards have to give up all that money coming in. Must implement a divesting plan of all government assets consistent with the standard transition. So, because I use the word must, it doesn't need a 70%. You get 5 best plans. You vote out one plan at a time until you have one remaining, which is a plan that you have to go with. And if you want to change it from these standards, from this structure, you have to be above a 70%, which I put right there. So basically, you have to have a divesting plan for each sector. It's going to look different for the local level than the state level, and the federal level might look different. Every sector is so incredibly different. Roads are different than school buildings, and that's different than military and the whole like. So let's keep on going. And I told you about the 70% parent sector board if you want to vary from this plan. But you have to understand we might be able to change some of the numbers, and maybe somebody with a good business mind could come in and say, we really need to do it this way. But what we don't want to do is a monopolized way of doing it. Now, the sector board is a monopolized way. Some of it needs to be some monopolized way, but having 100 different publicly traded corporations with that responsibility to be responsible for the stocks, fiduciary responsibility, that's going to be important. And we never want to go total monopoly on that. There is part of this that's going to be monopolized because it's going through the sector board. But let's keep on going. Clauses outside of this section, but relevant to section 12. Okay, so that's all the clauses within sector 12. But what are the few other clauses that are necessary? All current government-owned and controlled assets must be turned over to the parent sector board within 5-year transition and sold into the free market system. It's kind of already in there. We're going per sector now. We're just going to go through the 30 sectors and we're going to quickly discuss each one. The charities. So all government welfare systems gone. If you have a public hospital, that's owned by the government. We're going to sell it. And there'll be private sector owners that want to take over that because it's still going to be needed. Every government building that is a charity related will be going through these sectors, and then the money is going to come in, pay off the debt, and the Charitable Distribution Association collecting 5%. That's going to start taking over responsibilities for food, for medical, for all these different things. There's going to be, I think I have a plan out there for like 8-year transition for that, but I think we can do that quite a bit quicker. I want to get into that 5-year window, even for the charity system. Not too much for family law. Obviously, when I get to the courts, we sell off all the courts to the private sector. Nothing in religion, that's not going to be a relevant thing. Everything in the State Department, all the embassies, they all get sold to the private sector CRAs. Embassies might be a little bit tricky on that one. That might have to stay within the sector board level because that is primary authority at the sector board level. But the Pentagon, to a large degree, is going to be, it might go to the sector board level as well, but a large portions of that are going to be rented out by the CRAs, military corporations, CRAs, the commander-in-chief, CRAs and the like, and have a lot of cooperation. But ultimately, we're selling off everything. Even, the diplomats, I say it's going to stay at the sector board level. They still have to pay for it. They'll go into debt. They have to pay for it through the military capability system, the $1 trillion they have coming in, and they ultimately have to pay for it because we sell it all off and it pays down the debt. So if they want to have those assets, which we do, embassies are important and everything. They're very valuable. Many billions of dollars, tens and hundreds of billions of dollars worth of assets in the embassies and the State Department and the buildings and the like. All the personnel, they're all going to be needed, don't get me wrong, but we can sell them off. All the military corporation, boy, that's going to be tens of trillions of dollars worth of assets when we sell those things off. I mean, we're talking a ton of money for aircraft carrier, these F-18s, F-22s, F-15 Raptors, or whatever they are, F-22 Raptors. Pretty expensive stuff, satellites, nuclear weapons, all that's going to the free enterprise system. Obviously, people get worried, nuclear weapons is free enterprise system. It's all going to be controlled. And all of it's going to be much better accountability than we currently have right now. You can't use that on your own. You can't just go do what you want to do. A lot of things are going to be very well tracked and controlled. So let's not just think that free enterprise means go do whatever you want to. No, you can't. There's a lot the military corporations can do, but they're going to be limited on use. Their product is providing military capabilities to America under the control of the commander in chief, authorized by the diplomatic foreign policy to diplomats, and everybody within the system is authorized by Sector 9, and everybody within the system is paid for by Sector 9. It's a it is a division of power that's major checks and balances. Everybody will have a boss. Nobody can do things on their own, especially when you're talking about nuclear weapons, aircraft carriers, planes, and the like. Everybody has to swear allegiance to the chief executive for the diplomats, to the chief executive, to the commander in chief, to the military authorization agency leader, executive leader, quote unquote, the president. There'll be presidents for each one of these, each with distinct responsibilities, and you have to swear allegiance to the Constitution, to America, and to three of these bodies here, to the executive, lead executive, to three of these bodies. And anybody who's doing wrong, they can knock them out in a heartbeat with 40% vote in a lot of these different sectors. There's so many ways to knock somebody out if they start doing wrong. So let's keep on going. Boy, this is debt. We're talking about selling off property, law enforcement, every police station, every police car, all that stuff. The prosecutors is in Sector 11. There's office buildings for prosecutors and the like. A lot of assets out there. Law enforcement authorization, that's going to be a new sector. They're going to be renting rooms all over the place within everything, within police stations and the like. There are I want to call them the what's the oversight for the police officers, the internal affairs. That they're going to run the internal affairs as well, but they're more than just internal affairs. The judicial authority, every court building is going to be sold into the free enterprise system. Again, a lot more accountability because of the law enforcement authorization agency. A lot more accountability than the current system. Every prison, every jail will be sold into the free enterprise system. That's going to pay down a lot of debt, trillions of dollars worth of prisons out there. And every hospital, if it's publicly owned or partly publicly owned, all the different labs for the FDA, for the drug part of that, all the office buildings for regulatory bodies, for financial institutions, will be owned by the sector board here, sold to the free enterprise system, and paying down debt. Insurance regulatory bodies that own big buildings or whatever, sold into the free enterprise system. Education, man, how many trillions of dollars worth of school buildings do we have? Public school buildings cost tens of millions of dollars each, and we have many thousands of those buildings. Tens of thousands of schools out there. So that's a lot of assets that could be sold. Every public college, and if you are a public college in any way, let's say you're 90% private, 10% public, they're going to take part of that. They'll figure that out. Everybody's going to figure out whether they're public, private, or what percentage they are. Manufacturing, probably not too much there. Human resources and sales, not too much assets in there. Just some office buildings, government office buildings, dealing with that type of stuff. Identity, personal and business, that's all the DMV's buildings. And believe me, people use the DMV as a body that signifies government bureaucracy, and not in a good way. And let's say that in my system, you're going to have 12 different quote unquote DMVs to go to. You select the one that you want to, all of them competing for your service. So you're going to start seeing them open up on the weekends and the evenings and charging you a little bit more for coming out to your place to give you what you need, All of them are going to have high standards. Don't get me wrong. Rating floors for high standards. You can't pay for fraud. There'll be many ways to stop fraud in this manner. A whole representative system of the people. I mean, there's so many representative bodies of the people within this structure, and one's just going to make sure there's no fraud within each sector. The rating systems, environmental, all the EPA buildings out there, all the state level EPA systems out there, all the local ones, they're still going to be needed. We still want to protect the environment. And each CRA, environmental CRA, is going to rent rooms within that big building or whatever, but they'll have to sell off the building. They'll sell it off to the CRAs probably, and then a dozen different CRAs owning that building, renting rooms or whatever. But ultimately, they're selling it and paying off the debt. They're selling it to themselves to a certain degree, and paying off the debt. Work safety and disability, there's office buildings out there, nothing big. Transportation, every single road. How many trillions of dollars of roads there are out there? We don't know until we actually start selling them. Dollar cost average over 8 years. So that's going to be important, but that's going to bring in many, many trillions of dollars, if not tens of trillions of dollars. Media and communication, FCC buildings, I don't know. There's not that much assets there, minimal amount. But land and water, every government-owned piece of land has to be sold. It has to be sold. Every nature park, everything. Now, in the land and water, it requires a certain percentage of the land to be nature parks. So the nature parks will transition right into a nature park, but it still has to be sold. Pay off the debt. People have to pay for it through taxes, fees for their land and water CRA. But that's going to be paying for this debt, paying down the debt. But people are going to own part of the nature parks, obligated to stay in nature park, the state park, federal parks, or the local parks. Local parks are more recreational, and state parks can be recreational, but a lot more land. So each one's going to be a little bit different. Okay, Social Security and education taxes will continue for several decades to offset the debt. I already talked about this, I believe. Maybe I talked about it in my tax video. Maybe I didn't talk about it in this one. But education taxes are going to continue for the people who were educated by the government. So if you went to the public school system, or you sent your children to the public school system, you still have to pay taxes for life, because that's the setup right now. Everybody, the current system is set up that government invests in you in your early life, 12 to 16 years if you go to college, and then for the rest of your life you pay about $10,000 per household in taxes. We're spending well over $1.1 trillion a year over 110 million households. That's roughly $10,000 per household average per year. So that needs to continue. It's probably not going to be quite that much for the people who went to the public school system, because you were educated. That's going to pay down the debt. Social Security, there's going to be some type of tax there for you. I have a percentage in there, and I forget the exact way it's written right now, but that's going to go on until you're 50 years old, and then you don't have to pay it any longer. And that's going to offset some of that. Let's see if I have the numbers here. Okay, this is more for the Social Security, and we limit how much debt we have for Social Security by not giving anything to anybody under the age of 50. And from 50 to 70, it's prorated, and it's over 70 years old, you get your full amount. It's a responsible transition where it does not put so much debt into society that it harms the economy. Because if you harm the economy, the older people are not going to do well. Okay, I can go in for an hour, and I have to stop on that one. Okay, but you prorate it. That's what this 0.417% that per month drop off from the full amount from when you're 70. So if you're 60 you get roughly half of, well, I guess exactly half of the amount you would have gotten if you were fully if you were 70 years old. So 70 years old, you get enough to cover your Social Security and Medicare premiums because Medicare's gone. You go to free enterprise health insurance for the elderly. And I know that could scare a lot of people, but we have a dollar amount we spend on it, but we're going to spend that on premiums in the free enterprise system. So that limits how much debt that's going to go to the debt. And for a certain period of time, until you're 50 years old, you still have to pay an education tax. Let me see. For the purpose of personally defraying Social Security and Medicare, this is a clause in the Constitution. Social Security and Medicare debt liabilities for 50 years after this amendment passes, Sector 25 CRAs must place a 5% income share loan on their members. So they have to pay 5% share loan, income share loan on their members with a minimum of 3% of the state average per capita income. So we have a minimum. That's not a high minimum. That's kind of low, but everybody has to pay down this debt. So even if you're not working, you still have to pay down the debt. You better go work for the charity economy if you don't have the savings. Okay, per capita until the member reaches the age of 50. So once you hit the age of 50, no more tax for you. You're supposed to be saving up money dramatically from 50 to 70 for your own retirement. I know all the teaching about you should start saving at 20, and that money will be much bigger. And believe me, in this system, you can still start saving at 20. You still have to pay this 5%, but you still start saving at 20, and you should. But at age 50, that goes away, and that's the way I set it up. And if you want to discuss with me about why I set it up that way, it's logical, and I can give you those reasons. I'll probably do another video just on this, and I'll try to get into those reasons more later. The revenue derived from these share loans must be applied to the debt subject to Section 12. And a lot of this might be local, state, federal, whatever one makes the most sense. And I have it in the Constitution. There's a way to determine whether it's state, federal, local, and it's within the Constitution. And I believe that's in the original authority section. You can read that. Okay. Any citizen over the age of 70. Okay, I already did this one. Let me go. Let me go here. Okay, pretty much done on this. And let's see. Let's go back to this one. So we have the 5 in the charity system. 5 sectors in the charity system. There's going to be a lot of, not too much assets coming out of there. Public hospitals and the like. 5 in the foreign protection system. A lot of many trillions of dollars coming out of there. Maybe even tens of trillions of dollars coming out of there, selling all that. All the police stations and the court system and the prisons, that's going to be a lot of many trillions of dollars coming out of there. Public hospitals, good amount of money. Insurance, that is the sector where Social Security comes from. That's going to be probably a lot more debt than there is, a lot more liability debt than there is an asset of those 5% share loans. So that's why we need to pay more throughout the other taxes. But I'm trying to really divvy it up and not put too much burden on one place. But hey, everybody has a burden. If I take it off one place, I put it on another place, it still burdens you. But I try to split it up a lot. It all still comes back together, and it's still a big burden, no doubt about it. Education is going to be bringing in many trillions of dollars, selling off all the schools, colleges, public colleges. Obviously, if it's a private college, they keep what they have, and it doesn't get sold off. But if it's part public, because they're taking a lot of public money, they might be getting some of their money back. They might have to pay some of that money back, depending on how it works. I'm not sure exactly how all that's going to work, but the body that's going to do that is the Parent Sector Board and the current government in that 5-year transition plan. Land and water, selling off every piece of government land, and there's a lot of land out there owned by the government, And we might have dollar cost that out longer than 8 years just to get a good value, because that's a lot of land to put on the market in 8 years. And I know people could own stock in it and then transfer and sell it later, but we'll see if that one needs to go longer and dollar cost that out over 20 years instead of 8 years. And actually 28, Sector 28, all the roads, and that's airports and the waterways and all that. And every piece of waterway, every lake has to be sold. It's going to be owned by a free enterprise in the free enterprise system. And yes, there will be strong environmental rules, say it has to be in nature parks or be part of the, nature. But if a public corporation privately owns that, even if it's stocks, and somebody tries to pollute it, they can go after them for polluting them. And it's a better checks and balance than the government trying to do it, because governments, you have politicians that don't have the same interest as somebody who owns that corporation and the stockholders of that corporation. When there could be some private companies, private individuals owning something like that, but if you have a private person owning something like that, you might have some more issues where you have a little bit more controls by a CRA or a sector board or the rating system doing rating floors and the like. A lot of ways to do it, but there's controls on it, is what I'm trying to say. Anyway, okay. An hour-long video. I'm seeing at 56 minutes right now. But debt is a huge issue. You saw how much debt we have. $30 trillion on the books, but also I don't know how much Social Security is going to be within the system I have right there. I don't know what that dollar amount is. I'm sure there's people out there that could give me a good number. That's not my responsibility or my ability. I don't have that expertise to do that. And that's why I don't put the exact percentages how much real estate tax has to be, because I don't know. It's going to have to be what it needs to be to get that 30% real estate tax, 30% for the income tax. And that's not 30% income tax. 30% of the money needs to be collected from income tax. So it might be 2%, it might be 7%. I don't know what that income tax is going to be to pay off the debt. But 30% of the debt has to be paid off using that tax over a 50-year period. Anyway, please consider a donation to the Haley 2024, the movement. I'm trying to do this all on my own right now. It's a new set of ideas. I really need to get out there in the marketplace of ideas. I need to hire a person to do editing, social media. Eventually, I want to quit my personal sales job and go full-time with this, but I need money coming in for that. So please consider a donation. Anyway, until the next video.